Hello again, everyone. This is Kevin Johnson of Leverage Consulting. And yes, that's right. This is what you've been waiting for. The next episode of The Resilient Entrepreneur. In today's Resilient Entrepreneur podcast, really what I wanted to talk to you about was a video or an interview that I was listening to most recently. And, you know, it's funny, you may have heard me in some other podcasts where I joke about showering with someone different every day, and it's because I usually find time in the shower or somewhere else throughout the course of the day where I'm listening to one podcast or one interview, one video about something, or maybe I binge, just like you may binge on a Netflix or Amazon series. Sometimes I binge on certain experts or certain interviewers or someone who has great content. And this one that I've binged on a little bit recently was Tim Grover, and Tim Grover is he's a well-renowned coach. He coached Michael Jordan. He's coached Kobe Bryant, and the thing that really stood out to me I've got a book that I've listened to, downloaded another book recently, and I don't know, I've probably listened to 5 interviews with Tim Grover recently. There was one comment. And believe me, there's tons of great content in everything that I've heard, but there was one really, really big thing that stood out to me, and it was almost a flash in the pan when you consider the content or the however many minutes or hours I've listened to Tim Grover at this point, hours at this point. The interviewer asked Tim Grover, or he kind of made an assumptive question, I think it was, where he said, I guess Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant are the two most talented people you've ever coached, or something along those lines. And Tim Grover got very serious and looked at the interviewer and he said, no, actually not. He said they were both very gifted individuals, but they were not the most athletically gifted. They were not the most, comprehensive or the most well-rounded players that I've ever worked with. And the interviewer was stunned, and maybe some of you would be stunned by this as well. And that's because sometimes you look up to very successful people, and whether it's Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, or you look at Albert Einstein, or you look at other people who have done amazing things in their life or in their career, and you look up to them, and you may think, oh, I want to be just like them. But there's always that huge but that's in there. But I'm not like them. I'm not gifted like them. I'm not talented like them. I don't have these God-given abilities like them. And you listen to or read things about Albert Einstein, and there's quotes out there or things that he said where, he said, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm just one that kept asking questions until I arrived at an answer, which basically meant he was persistent or relentless when it came to seeking the answer or finding success. And when Tim Grover talked about Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, and even Tim Grover talking about just best practices and what he works on with his people that he works with, it's very much about process. And many times there's a formula to the process. And even with that, I was on a Clubhouse chat recently, and this was actually the question of the day was something to the effect of can micro changes or small changes have a big effect? And this is where I really believe where the Michael Jordans and the Kobe Bryants or the Albert Einsteins, or you pick your hero or the person that you look up to, and think about what is it that they've really been able to do, because there's really no one out there that is so well-rounded or so have these God-given talents. You can have people out there that have God-given talents but never apply them. So many people have these abilities and they just don't put them to use, don't apply them. And it could be that they're afraid of offending someone else, or it could be that they don't have the confidence in their own abilities. There's a number of different reasons, which is the reason why sometimes you need someone to help you draw that out of you, someone to help figure out how to draw that confidence out in you, or how to leverage it. Because sometimes it could just be, if we sat down and talked, it may come around that you just feel you don't have the time. And even with that, you find a way to develop the confidence, or you find a way to develop the time, and there's always an answer. There's always an answer. The question is, how badly do you want it? And it was, again, Tim Grover, it was kind of an interesting thing. He had an example where one of his players, he looked at the player and he said, okay, well, we're gonna start this again tomorrow at 3. And the ball player showed up at 3 p.m. the next day, and Tim Grover and his team evidently were standing there looking really, really disgusted. And the player said, well, I'm ready now. And he said, well, you're 12 hours late. And it was somewhat of an interesting story because, in Tim Grover's way of looking at it, 12 a.m. is the start of a new day. When you say we're going to start this again tomorrow, you technically tomorrow starts at 12 a.m., which is, but it speaks to how badly do you want this? How badly are you interested, or, how deeply do you want this success? And, I think you talked about Kobe Bryant and how he'd be in the gym at 3 a.m. doing drills, or he's doing cardio or doing something because that's what he did to get better. And even when they talked about Michael Jordan, it was about the formula. And some of it was just repetition and developing muscle memory. Some of it was getting it to a point where you didn't have to think about things. Your body just automatically adjusted or made the play, made the move, what have you. And this is something that when you think about yourself, your business, your career, and you think about whether you are at the pinnacle of your capabilities or you're at you've reached your own capacity. And I can categorically tell you the answer is no. Those of you who have been listening to these podcasts or followed me for any period of time, worked with me for any period of time, you know that I'm very much into listening to and following a number of Navy SEALs. Part of it is they have a 40% rule. 40% rule is when your body says, I've had enough, that typically means you've reached 40% of your capacity. That means you can go further. I've got examples over time where I thought I was pushing myself, and this is just one I always refer back to. Super simple, but I've been mountain biking for quite some time, and I thought, okay, I'm really doing well now. Like I've come so far, I've done so great. And I'm sitting here laughing at myself saying this, but this is what I was thinking at the time. It's like I've built up this cardio. I'd taken another guy out who I was working out with, an MMA fighter at the time. I took him out in the woods and basically smoked him. He couldn't keep up with me. But the funny part was I went mountain biking with these two, I say old guys. I was probably in my early 40s, say 42 at the time. And I go mountain biking with these two guys that are at least 20 years older than I am. I think the one might have been 65, 67. And he was running this big, old, heavy, if you know what they are, the Y bike, this like 30-pound mountain bike. And I couldn't keep up with the guy. And he was like a squirrel on this thing. He's a little tiny guy, but I couldn't even begin to keep up with him. But it showed me how, even though I've come a long way, I have so much more capacity. And that's what sometimes you need to be able to do, is find a way to push beyond wherever the discomfort is. And then secondly, put yourself in the company of other people who are going to push you or show you, basically open your eyes to the fact that you have so much more potential. And that's where I think too many times, if you're honest with yourself, too many times the reason that you have stopped, or the reason you have slowed down, or you've been attracted to something else, is because you get in your own mind. You start saying, well, I can't do it because, or this is as good as it gets, or I'm not as good as that person. And you come up with all the reasons why it's not going to happen, as opposed to figuring out the 1, 2, 3 reasons or ways in which it will happen. So think about that. This is literally one of the biggest things, and this is going to be one of my next podcasts coming up, is talking about how sometimes we allow our mind to get in our own way. And it's interesting because even though I've had a number of folks that I work with right now who are wildly successful, doing very, very well, they're just in a place where they're just not happy. And it's for a number of different reasons. So like I said, I'm going to incorporate some of that into the next podcast. So stay tuned. I am pretty sure if you've enjoyed this one, you're going to like the next one even more.